This video is going to show you a solo flawless Ghost of the Deep dungeon during Season of the Witch. For those who just want to see that and skip their timestamps. So this is just a tick list of what you want to do before you start the solo flawless dungeon. This is the emblem that you'll be rewarded with when you do so, which I'm aware of people still going after this emblem. The dungeon, to be fair, has only been a season old, but I'll start out with a Warlock run. I'll do all three classes for this season, but as I said, I'll start out with a Warlock run. So the first thing that you need to do is I would recommend that you make 5 builds in your loadouts. If your loadouts are full, your 10 builds, to make it simple for you, just delete them on dim. You can delete loadouts on dim, yes, you can do that. This is how I've done it, just to simplify my menu. It's a tip for you. So this build 9, for example, is the first build I'll use for the first encounter. Alright, I'm not going to talk about it too much about the first encounter because it's really easy. The key points about it is though that I have Xenophage on. Xenophage is really good for the first encounter in this dungeon. Build 1 and 2 are going to be for the first boss in this dungeon, right? So this build revolves around Vesper of Radius with the exotic sword, the Lament. So it'll be on screen as you see it, but there'll be more information about all of this sort of stuff in the run itself, because it is a longish video. I can't talk about every single element right now, obviously, but we've got another build for it, right? So this build is the same, well, it's technically the same, but it has Geomag stabilizers on with triple solar weapon surge, right? Because we've got Lament on. This is our DPS, so we've got a DPS build and a survivability build with Arc Warlock Curse Ridge, which, as I say, I can talk about the individual components in the run itself, but if there's any information you want on it, I can give you that. For the final boss, build 5 and 6 is used, so it's the similar setup in terms of exotics used and class used. The difference is weapon loadout, so I won't talk too much about the class, but we're using Riptide, exotic SMG Riskrunner, and Stormchaser linear fusion rifle. Build 6 revolves around Arbalest and Stormchaser, so we've slightly changed it, just that there's a special weapon in the connect slot and that we've changed to Arbalest for obvious reasons. If you don't know why that is, then you'll see that in the run. Same thing, DPS build for build 6, because this is survivability build. When we get to damage, you need a DPS build because of how tanky the bosses are in this dungeon. So that's the loadouts I recommend. So this solo flawless is only going to contain the 3 encounters that are in the dungeon, which is Break the Ritual, which is what we're on, Echtar, the first boss, and then the final boss after that. There's a lot of traversal sections in this dungeon. I don't feel as though I need to add all that stuff because this video is not for somebody who first time playing, needs to experience it. It's more just to help people do their solo flawless in a different season, because obviously we've got a new season now and the artifact mods are a little bit different to what they were last season when the dungeon came out. So there'll be no traversal sections in this. This was in fact a solo flawless. It's just that it makes it easier for me to edit the video if it's just the 3 encounters, the 3 main encounters in this. There's nothing I can give you information wise on the traversal section apart from where to go, but you should know that. You should know that before you attempt to even solo flawless. So the Break the Ritual encounter, Xenophage is really good for this. Differences between this season and last season with this dungeon. I feel as though this encounter feels a little bit more dangerous than what it did with the knights and stuff, so I take a bit more care with them. I always super the wizard. It isn't a Geomag stabilizer's Curse Ridge because I've got Vesper of Radius on, but you don't need that. You will kill the wizard anyways with the super. I'm using the Eremite Solar Fusion, which works out good on those solar wizards, but again, so does Xenophage. So overall, I felt that this encounter felt very similar to what it did last season, if I'm being completely honest. But as I say, I highly recommend the Xenophage because it's just because you can one-shot a solo wizard and you're taking a lot of wizards out, right? I recommend that you hit these moths because they do a lot of damage. Like they're doing half HP, and I've got double arc resist and concussive dampener on. So, well, actually I haven't on this particular build, I don't think, but they're doing a lot of damage. So make sure that you actually take extra care with the moths as opposed to what we were like last season, because we haven't got electric armor, right? But I won't give much more information about Break the Ritual encounter because it's literally just teaching you to dunk a rune into a statue. This mechanic that we're going to be doing later on anyways. I'm using the hand cannon, that's the seasonal ritual one. It's actually really good. You don't have to use the seasonal ritual hand cannon, I just wanted to try it out, and it is nice. So yeah, I'll pick up the rest of the commentary when I get to the first boss. So with Echtar, the first boss of Ghost of the Deep, I recommend that you put on elemental submissions, which I think I'm going to change to now on the seasonal artifact. Elemental ammunition. So basically, when you get a kill with the orb, whatever elemental orb you spec'd into, I've obviously spec'd into Arc, you get a chance at getting heavy and special. Now I don't know the specifics of it, and I haven't tested it to high heavens. I just know that when I was running this, it was kind of nice having that extra ammo, because the ammo economy has changed in the game massively. Right, I'll get more into that as more phases happen. But with the solo for this, obviously I'm using Vesper of Radius, right, which I haven't really talked about at all too much. You can basically Vesper Rift every single knight that you have to deal with. There's 3 knights, left, mid, right. Left, mid, top. You then get an ogre, right, which I recommend you super that ogre. Right, then you can literally just zoom off, go do your deep sight mechanic, and remember the 3 symbols. I recommend you do it in 3 symbols. My week 1 strategy for this was do 2 symbols, go up top, then do another symbol. I don't recommend that you do that. That was just my week 1 strat. Now, remember your 3 symbols, which isn't that hard to do. It's not remembering them, it's the boss. So obviously when you're in the deep dive section, the boss can stomp you, and that takes away pressure resistance and can be a wipe. You need to know the pattern of all the symbols and all the different combinations. So for example, say we get tripod, ice cream, spider with spike. That's a nice route, it's on the outside. There's plenty of maps that people have made for Ghost of the Deep. Well, for every encounter in actual fact. Apart from the first one, you don't need a map for the first one. Well, actually there probably has somebody that's made a map for that. But when you do your 3 runes, right, downstairs, when you come back up top, that spawns in the Hive Guardians, 3 wizards, to be more precise. Same deal. You can Vesper Radius Rift every single wizard. Which chances are you compare that with a arc melee, which does massive damage now, especially when you're amplified, or a pulse grenade. Chances are you're going to, because I've got double bomber on it and I've got all, you know, ionic traces and all that sort of stuff. So the wizards are really easy to deal with. You just need to play into your build. Mine's the Vesper. So I'm going to prioritise getting those rifts up. Because not only that, the rift is going to blind enemies and deal the shockwave. I'm going to rift the final statue because you put the vestige of light that you killed the wizards with into the statues. I'm going to rift the final one and make sure that I've got at least a pulse nade and a good amount of healing rift energy. Then swap to my second DPS build that I explained at the start of the video. This then turns on Solar Surge, triple Solar Surge. You then need to immediately kill your knight with a pulse grenade and Lament. Right, then immediately super. 360 turn and then super. Yeah, you can do it on console, it's not just a PC thing. Just immediately do it because that will then take down the boss's shield. But if you're slow about it, I will be honest, if you're slow about it, the boss is going to push you and you're going to lose a lot of damage. It's just how it is. You need to get into the routine of doing that. The quicker your reactions are on that little bit, the better you're going to do on this boss fight. It's the harsh reality of it. But I will be honest, it really doesn't matter anyways because you're probably going to solo 5 phase. If you're 6 phase and then you really are doing something wrong, but you're probably going to 5 phase. 4 phasing, I have 4 phase this boss with Lament. Just I'm struggling to do that now. Just because it's a little, as I say, it's quite tight the damage to get the solo 4 phase with Lament. There are other options like doing Tractor Cannon and Legend of Acreus and stuff. But that requires a different strat. I wanted to do an Arc Warlock the entire run because Arc Warlock was really good last season. I wanted to see is it still good this season for this dungeon. Because we are lacking some mods that we had from last season. Electric armor, lightning strikes twice and all that sort of stuff. And to be honest with you, it still works just as well. Maybe not quite as well because we're lacking electric armor, but you've got your as long as you've got T10 resilience and you use the Vesper build or Stag, but I think Vesper's slightly better for this dungeon because of the amount of enemies that are in here. You may as well run Vesper instead. So it's rinse and repeat from here. My first damage phase, so we comment on that, right? So what we got down to the A. That's good damage. Anything past T damage for your first phase, I know this with experience, is pretty much where you should be. It's decent damage with Lament. Because the beautiful thing with Lament is, yeah, it's not the best damage in the world, but it's surviving and consistent. If you want to do the Legend of Acreus strat, then you really need to know what you're doing and have all that stuff set up. This is more of a universal strategy for most players to pull off. Just means that you have to do 1 extra phase, which is not a big deal because you can average 3 to 4 minutes per phase anyways. So this first boss fight isn't much of a big deal if you don't run the absolute top damage supreme meta that you can. Because the meta for it anyways for consistency is Lament. Lament is the best, most consistent way to solo this. Doesn't mean that it's the most damage, but every time you do it, it's the same. But you need to, as I say, make sure that you melt down that knight. in the circle, because when you kill that knight, he spawns the damage rift for you to take down the boss's shield. If you get knocked out of that rift, you don't deal damage to the boss's shield. Now Arbalest will one-shot the shield, right? Which there was tricks that you could do with that, where you could use a bipod rocket and stuff. I tested that, and the payoff isn't really worth it to be testing to be swapping weapons during DPS and stuff. You're still potentially gonna 5-phase if you mess up, so you may as well just go Lament. There's no added bonus. Like when you're doing a dungeon, you always think of the loadout, right? Does this loadout mean I'm gonna do one less phase? If the answer is definitely yes, well then you go with that loadout probably. But if the answer is, well, maybe it might save me a phase, you are based on a maybe. One of your 4 phases, if you get knocked out of that rift, which can happen, your 4 phase is gone, because you haven't pulled off frame by frame perfect DPS with Lament and frame by frame perfect with your Chaos Reach. And that's the harsh reality of it. So you may as well just go Lament. Just do it as I'm showing you. Pulse Nade, Lament the Knight, immediately turn around Chaos Reach. I have Lament pulled out as I do the final statue, because you need to get here as quickly as possible. You can't mess around up there, because the longer you mess around up top, you lose damage. Because DPS starts as you put the last vestige in. It does not start when you take down the shield. Unfortunately, I wish it did work like that, because it'd be a little bit better for damage, which that's what this dungeon suffers with replayability wise, is that no one wants to solo flawless it because it takes ages to do. Like literally I've searched, I know the Crota's End just came out, and I know that GM's just came out, and I know that the Rotate playlist just came out, but no one's playing this dungeon. I've checked the YouTube search results, not on Twitch. I haven't checked Twitch because there's no way of checking Twitch in that sense unless you've watched somebody do it. YouTube, there's barely any solo flawless from Season of the Witch for Ghost of the Deep. Why is that? Because the replayability of the dungeon isn't very good. Even though the dungeon is the best dungeon in the game, mechanic wise, the bosses are too tanky still, which they haven't adjusted, and they're not going to adjust them either. This is how they want this dungeon to be. Now the first boss isn't too much of a problem. As I say, you can beat him in 20 minutes solo. That's actually not too bad. Well, we say it's not too bad, but can I remind you something? We can beat solo flawless Shattered Throne in less than 20 minutes. Right? Just let that settle in. I can do the full dungeon in less than 20 minutes. Casually as well. We're not really thinking about it. Whereas this one boss is taking 20 minutes. So that's probably more to the fact that Shattered Throne is really lagging behind in difficulty compared to the new dungeon, Spire of the Watcher, Duality, and this one, and even Prophecy. So I suppose it's lagging behind, which at some point they need to do something about that. What they do, I don't know, but I don't want to master Shattered Throne. That's not the answer either. I just want them to sort of maybe buff the boss's HP. That's what they need to do. Which they actually stealth buffed Shattered Throne, Dul Inkaru, the Wizard. They actually stealth buffed that boss's HP about 4 seasons, maybe 4 seasons ago. It's a while ago. But they stealth buffed and no one realised. But she takes enhanced precision damage, so you can melt her so fast, or with Warlock Coil. Sort of an exploit, but they won't look at it because they're not bothered. It's all content. So our HP on this boss is just above half. So you can see the 4-phase dream has gone. It's already gone. I've already accepted my fate. The damage is just slightly out of range. There could be a way of, like, say, maybe getting a debuff on him, which you can with Felwinter's Helm. If you finish the night, that is a speedrun strat I've saw people do. That is a way of doing it, and then just don't bother with Geomag stabilizers. Just go with Felwinter's Helm. That's a way of debuffing. But the other debuff I was referring to is Rapid Fire Ranger. Rapid Fire Ranger will debuff an enemy, but with it, You can't be dead close to them to get the debuff. You've got to be a few meters away to proc that. But I'm just saying, if there was a way to consistently proc a debuff on him like that, it would be nice. But as I said, the Fell Winter's Helm I've just said will be could be a half decent strat. It's just, as I say, your case reach will be far less damage than what it is with Geomags. So it's up to yourself. That is a strategy, but I feel as though that's more complex for people. They would have to leave the night finishable, right? You'd have to get the finish at the exact time. Bear in mind, while that's going on, the boss is throwing 2 shields at you. If both of them hit you, it leaves you 1 shot. And if you haven't got the right resilience, it kills you. So you might be overcomplicating DPS, and if you overcomplicate DPS, that's where you get your wipes. Which you're not looking to overcomplicate it. It's already long enough as it is, the dungeon itself. It's just so consistent. You're basically using your curse reach as a mini Arbalest to sort of take down his shield. Now if he stops like that, if you do your curse reach as you should, he'll stop just before the circle, which means he doesn't knock you back, which means your damage will go up. This damage phase in particular was really good actually. This was probably the best damage I've done out of the phases. The Lament combo, because I know people are going to comment on it. The Lament combo to do, right, is 2 light a heavy, then 2 swings, 2 light a heavy. But there is occasions where I break that rule and do different combos. Because, as I said, you've got to accept your fate. It's a 5 phase anyways. Just because I start doing 2 light heavy isn't going to change it to a 4 phase. Right? It needs to, the damage needs to be perfect with Lament to get the 4 phase. Like I say, I have done it. I have a video on it. I already have done that last season. On this class as well, funnily enough. So, but as I said, it's just one of those things. It doesn't matter, because all it does is cost you time. But remember, when you get in Solo Flawless Emblems, does it tell you anywhere on your emblem what your Solo Flawless time was? Do you get a worse emblem than me just because your run was 2 hours and mine was 1 hour 30? Or 1 hour 20 or whatever? Like, open your mind a little bit. It doesn't matter, right? Because the emblems, the dungeon's not timed. You're not playing a GM. You're not trying to break a world record. Because if you were trying to break a world record on the Solo Flawless for this, you wouldn't need to watch this video. Which I think the world record for this is 33 minutes by Echtar. I think he's still got it. But you wouldn't need to watch this video. What are you watching this video for if you're trying to speedrun it? You wouldn't need to. It's for people who, as I say, need assistance with it. Because I've had a couple of questions about Ghost of the Deep this particular season. Can you do go? Because when a new season starts, people won't watch the old season Solo Flawless. They get really funny about it, which I agree with them to an extent, because the artifact mods are gone now for Season of the Deep. They don't exist in the game. You've now got new mods to play with. So what we could do last season isn't what we can exactly do this season. The sandbox has changed. That's why a lot of you solo players, I notice some of you sort of get fed up of uploading Solo Flawless every season, but you need to keep it up because the sandbox changes every season. This is how you've got to do it for PvE. You've got to repeat it over and over, right? Because the sandbox is changing every season. So what's Solo Flawless Prophecy like this season? What's Solo Flawless Duality like this season? What's this dungeon like? What's this Nightfall like? What's this raid like? And so on and so forth. That's how people can make content for so long. Because they just keep it going on the loop. Right? Don't get me wrong, it is a bit of a nightmare to make content on this game. Because we've got to literally play it like that. Because there's not enough content to keep us going. So we have to replay all content to keep the engine going, if you know what I mean, for PvE. But I'm not complaining too much because this season's actually really good. There's lots of weapons to chase. There's the hand cannon this week, right? Some of the seasonal weapons are really good. The rocket launcher and the fusion rifle. There's some, decent things about the seasonal activity is good. Although I will complain that Altars of Summoning is not rewarding at all. I played it for like 1 or 2 hours in one run because you can stay in there. I didn't get any reds. Barely got anything worth my time doing it. It's only worth to do it once, or you know, for the triumphs and what have you. But it isn't worth it to keep doing it unless you really enjoy it. So that is one complaint of the season. But as I said, overall, as the season goes, it's a good solid season. I won't rate it yet because there's still a lot more to come. But with the leaks, if you haven't saw one of the boss rooms, then you're in for a treat because one of the boss rooms is really well designed. I won't say because there'll be some people who don't want to know, but there's going to be an amazing boss fight coming up for the seasonal story. If you weren't aware, well, I assume it's a boss room. It will be by the looks of it. Somebody out of bounds glitched it and went on to see. So this was close here. That's fine. We Lament away. We took some impact damage from the pulse nade, which got us weak. So can you see how 2 issues catapulted to us having a death? It's like dominoes, right? One thing happens, alright, this isn't too bad. Next thing you know, you make a slight minor mistake, which ends up being a big problem. So we were weak approaching DPS. We then took impact damage from our own pulse nade to get us even weaker. Lament healed us a little bit, right, which then almost killed us. But as I said, because we were down with our routine, I end up managing it, making it work. It wasn't too much of a, like I say, a problem. But the boss, as I say, he's got a tiny bit of HP. So I'll just speed up this phase because I've literally went through pretty much everything there is to this encounter. Healthy finisher is a big one. See, on my survivability build, I've got the class piece armor mod called Healthy Finisher, which maintains your charge with light. Well, sorry, I keep calling it charge with light. You know why? Because we've had charge with light for years, and when they change it to armor charge, honestly, for veteran players, it's just been a nightmare. But with my armor charge, I maintain the armor charges unless I use my finisher. But because of my build with Arc Warlock, elemental charge on the boots, every time you get Ionic Trace, there's a chance to get an armor charge. So you're going to be getting loads of armor charges anyways. But when you finish a wizard or a knight or whatever, you get health regen. It's literally one of the best mods in the game because we are finishing more targets in the game than we ever used to. There's champions, there's ultras, there's this, there's that. It's literally one of the best mods in the game. And not only that, it helps you keep armor charges, which is probably an oversight. And I don't want Bungie to nerf it, but if they see enough of people doing this, they may do that. Because we're not meant to be maintaining triple surges the whole time, and we're not meant to turn them on and off. It is a exploit to the armor charges. It's an exploit, but yet every single player who uses this sort of thing doesn't complain or say, oh, you know, this is a bit of a glitch. It's a glitch. We shouldn't be turning this stuff on and off. The builds, when they created the new build system, it wasn't meant to be like this, but it's an oversight. But at the same time, the boss's HP in this dungeon are quite high, so you kind of need the triple surges to be on and off when you need it. But that was the solo for Echtar. So now on with the final boss. The loadout is the same as previous, but we're now using a different set of weapons. We're using an exotic SMG Riskrunner, Stasis Fusion Rifle Riptide, and aggressive frame linear Stormchaser. So the reason for Riskrunner is that it's going to add a lot of resistance to the build, and the boss does mainly arc and the knights. So when that boss is peppering you shielded, you're just going to get buffed with Riskrunner. So it's probably the best exotic primary in this because of that fact, and it's stacked with other resistance buffs. So for example, I've got on stack of I've got a fragment for resistance for arc and spark of haste. These three mods together, so when I'm running, so when I'm sprinting and there's enemies close and I've got Riskrunner procced, All these three things work together, so your damage resistance multiplier will be really good. So with the solar floors for this fight, it's obviously a really long fight. What's the things that you should be doing per phase? That's really what it boils down to. The first job that you should be doing is taking out the Arc Boomer Knights that you just saw me do. They respawn every phase, right? Once per DPS phase they spawn up. At that point you then need to go for deep sight, which on the first phase it's always middle, but then after the first phase for some reason it's never middle. There's 3 spawn locations for deep sight. Then you need to kill a knight in the ritual circle. Remember with the ritual circles though, it always starts with middle, but middle cannot be the first ritual point that you do. It can only ever be second or third. So when you're looking at your ritual triangle, right, you need to look at what else it is other than middle, because that'll be your first location. So if it's top, at the very top, it's very top. If it's bottom, then it's bottom. But you can choose, but you can't choose middle first. That is the only rule in this. Well, the other rule is that you stand in the ritual circle to kill your knight. If you don't do that, it won't work the mechanic. Like if you kill the knight outside of the ritual circle, you then have to redo. And you'll get a bunch of moths, even if you do the mechanic wrong. But when you do the mechanic right, you still get moths. Which I recommend that if you're on top with managing your acolytes, like me, then maybe try and shoot those down as soon as you can. Always pay attention to your HP. It's the best tip that I can give when you're doing this dungeon, is that always pay attention to your HP as well as your gameplay. You need to be assessing things constantly, especially when you're going to dunk some symbols later on. So that's the first mechanic, right? The ritual mechanic that we've done. We've covered that. Make sure that you're popping your Vesper Radius Healing Rifts appropriately. Using Riptide to freeze your knight. Stuff like that. Don't refrain from using heavy this early in the fight. Later on in the fight you can. I mean on ads. Don't use heavy on the ads right now though. You don't need to. Your setup is sufficient to deal with everything. Right, so we're going to melt down this sentinel. We've got line as our symbol. Always look at your symbol before you destroy ghost. If you don't do that, right, and you haven't looked at your symbol, it'll disappear and you won't know which symbol to dunk. And if you dunk the wrong symbol, you wipe. So that's another rule that you must do, is that look at your symbol before destroy ghost. Always. So it was line. Which we go, I have a routine on this phase. This is like the second phase of mechanics. I always go Sentinel, Hunter, Warlock. As in, that refers to the Guardians. So Void, Solar, Arc. That is my routine. Even if Sentinel does have a symbol that I don't want to take, I'll just get him weak. It could be the Wizard, it could be any of them. I'll get them weak and then move on. The reason for this is because we will always do DPS from middle if you do this strategy. Which is nice because it gives you a routine, but there is a con to it which I'll get to when we get to actual damage. Riptide's going to do you really well at freezing these Guardians, even when they're mid-sur. But the solar one, play cover, play to your surroundings, because you don't want the solar blade barrage to hit you. Not all of the daggers, because it can almost wipe you, that attack, even on normal difficulty. So don't chance it. Just don't chance it. So now we'll go to Wizard. We've prepped the final symbol, which I don't know what that is. Watching it back, I've just forgot what it was. But we've prepped the final symbol because I never go for middle last. Sorry, I never go for middle first. Or second, for that matter. Only, I always save that symbol for last. But it's part of the strategy, and it's the same strategy I used for the first season of Ghost of the Deep. Is that to prep the final room of the Hive Guardian, wherever it might be. What I mean by prep, I mean kill all acolytes and get your Hive Guardian a 3rd HP, let's say. then leave. The reason for this is because it saves you time later on to be in a routine to get on top of the Acolyte phase. For you to really understand this, because I remember talking about it on Reddit, someone asked about the spawns and people didn't really know on Reddit. Oh, the Acolytes spawn up, yeah, they spawn up on DPS. No, they don't spawn on DPS. That can't be any more wrong, right? That doesn't happen at all. Yes, they do spawn on DPS, only because you make it that way. You can manipulate the Acolytes so that they spawn at the back end of DPS. I can't guarantee that it will be at the exact end of DPS, but it should be near the end. And this is what you do. You need to listen on this, because I say so many people don't even understand how to get it right. Let's just say you've prepped your final Hive Guardian. You're on your final symbol. Before you go in that room, you need to clear out the Acolyte wave that's just spawned up. They are on I think it's a 45-second timer, the Acolytes. Right? It's roughly that amount of time. You need to melt the enemies as quickly as possible. This is where Riskrunner comes in, your Pulse Nade, your Healing Wrist. Spam all your abilities. Then race as fast as you can. Right, Arc 3.0 is going to help that with amplified speed boost. Go to your final Guardian that I prepped earlier, which was Solar Hunter. Because the middle symbol is Burger. That's what I refer it to as that. And we wanted to save that symbol because we DPS from mid. Whatever your final symbol is where you DPS. So pick wisely. Pick wisely on where you are DPSing from, because it doesn't matter. A middle is always a symbol that's up. Whereas back top isn't always up. Even though it is a nice place to DPS, it's not always up. It is up right now, but I stick to my routine no matter what, really. So you need to crush the ghost and go out immediately. You'll get a fresh spawn of Acolytes. Melt these Acolytes as quickly as possible. Right? Melt them as quickly as possible with your abilities. Hopefully you have a rift back, because you need that. Go behind cover. I use this rock all the time. Swap to DPS build, which I already mentioned at the start of the video. Activate the final section. Use Arbalest to one-shot shield. And then just break out Stormchaser. Now, there is a debuff this season called Rapid Fire Ranger. The problem with Rapid Fire Ranger is that for you to proc Rapid Fire Ranger, you need to be close enough. So you need to be far away enough from a boss or a target to proc it. So it was really unfortunate, because I love middle DPS, but I wasn't able to debuff the boss consistently because the boss, she is annoying. Teleport and all that sort of stuff. And if only the boss was like 5 meters back each phase, I would be able to debuff boss, get a debuffed Chaos Reach off, and make this fight a solo 4 phase comfortable. Which it almost was a solo 4 phase, it was so close. The reason why it wasn't is because I wasn't getting debuffs off, and that's plain and simple. There's a remedy to that. You could get DPS from back top, sorry, right? You could DPS on the hill, on Oryx's head. You could do that. You're gonna proc the Sundering Glare, the Rapid Fire Ranger, easier, which would mean more DPS. The trouble with that is, Thrall push you up there, and it's just an annoying place to DPS from. I don't like it, although it would be better for the Rapid Fire Ranger. But I've also found when you stand up there, the boss teleports more, unless you're running the heavy exotic Leviathan's Breath, because that has unstoppable rounds in it and it stun locks the boss, whereas if you haven't got unstoppable, it doesn't stun lock the boss. So my reasoning is that it's still better to DPS in middle, just that Sundering Glare or Rapid Fire Ranger, whatever. I don't know why they keep changing the name of the damn mod. It's one or the other. The Rapid Fire Ranger is harder to proc in mid because the boss is so close to you, and that's the annoyance of it. But I suppose at the very least that this run is applicable to another future season because I didn't use rapid fire. I mean, there might have been times when it was procced, but it wasn't frequent enough, and I didn't get a debuffed Chaos Reach off like I would hoped that I would, which would have been so good. But it's just the boss. It is an annoying boss, this. It is. To DPS at least. So now we just rinse and repeat from here. Our first phase of damage was down to nearly the U. It's decent damage. It's about 2.5 mil. I'm probably doing about 2.5 mil damage, which is decent. It's alright. 3 mil's better though. But as I said, boss is just slightly too close to us to proc it. Sometimes. Just depends. There's an RNG factor to the boss where how close the boss will be. So from here on out, it's really just rinse and repeat from here, to be honest. Why I was so interested to run a Ghost of the Deep so early on in this season is to see how the ammo economy is now in this dungeon, because this dungeon suffered from, well, all dungeons suffer from ammo economy issues previous to this season. When you run primary special heavy, you get a reduced rate at heavy, but that has now been fixed, and now it seems to be that you get much more heavy than what we did when running primary special heavy. The question is, can you get away with double special heavy? And I don't know the answer to the question for this particular run. I know in GMs you can get away with it because there's a Warlock helmet that provides you ammo and all this. And you got Aeon gauntlets and stuff like that. But I'm saying, when you're solo, is it still worth to run double special? Probably not. I would say no, probably not. This will be better because you know you are going to get the heavy, right? So you may as well run primary special heavy. And this fight is very good with Riskrunner because of the damage resistance, the ag clear potential. It's literally the best thing that you can run. The only thing that my loadout lacks is the Root of Nightmare weapons, which provides a damage bonus exclusive to them weapons for this boss. So Briar's Contempt is objectively going to be a far better choice than anything else that you can really think of, apart from Leviathan's Breath. But what you need to understand about Leviathan's Breath is it is a bugged weapon on PC. I'm not calling PC players. I know a lot of PC. To be fair, the majority of Destiny 2's on PC. It's seeming that way anyways. But it's bugged on PC. Does more DPS than what it should. I don't see anyone on PC. If I just want to do a little bit of a thing, I don't see anyone on PC asking them to fix it because it's a good DPS option for people. But yeah, like, I've never been like that. Generally, like, if I know if something's wrong on a platform, I'll say fix it, make it standardized across all platforms so that it's a level playing field for all. Right? If it's bugged, well, if it's bugged to frames, Leviathan's Breath, it's doing more damage than it should, then they should fix that. They done it with 1000 Voices because that was bugged due to frames as well. Now the upshot of that is on PC, if your frames are higher, you get hit more frequently from enemies. So I will give them a bit of leeway there, that the combat is slightly harder if you play with a high frame rate on PC. But if you cap your frames to what console is, then the issue is fixed. Therefore now you are better than console, because you're getting the joys of having a relaxed combat sort of experience like on console, so you're not getting hit as hard, but then you've got a mouse and keyboard, and your turn radius is enhanced so much that you can check things more frequently than what a console player can do. I was watching a solo GM this week on the Europa Battlegrounds, and obviously Invis Hunt is the way, like, the best class, but there is other ways of doing it. But seeing a couple of people running like Invis, and if you watch an Invis Hunter on PC, you watch how more agile they can be. When the trappers ambush and they can immediately turn right to check behind them and then carry on moving and then check all like scope all the way around the room so much faster than what a console player can. You try and do that. Try and trap his ambush on a hunter, and then immediately turn your camera behind you. See how quickly you can do it. There is a turn radius modifier on your settings, but you ain't beating no console, no PC player, especially a PC player, especially a good one at that, like a really good one. So it's just a thing that, yeah, the combat's a little harder on PC, but they've got a better set of tools, if you like, to combat with it. And I'm qualified to say that because I do, and I'm kind of happy about it because I've played on console the entire lifespan of D2 and D1. Obviously D1 was only console, but that's 9 years worth now. Well, yeah, basically it is. So I know the ins and outs on console. I know what you can and can't do to a degree. And that's not to say that there's things that can't be done. There's some world's first being done by some console players in the past. For example, Scourge of the Past. Scourge, what was it, Phase 1 Streak Killer console player, got world's first on that. Like the solo. There's been a couple of instances in the past, but I'm going back a couple of years, which most of you forget and don't really know. But I know like the history of a couple of things and a couple of players who might not be around anymore, but I still remember it. So it's just, as I say, rinse and repeat from here really. We're on a DPS phase. This is phase 2. We'll swap behind our rock, initiate the sigil thing, and then immediately do Arbalest. I recommend a healing rift. For some reason this boss isn't stunning as much as the boss used to last season. I know that because I never used to pop a healing rift on the start of DPS, and now I'm having to because the boss isn't getting stunned by Stormchaser. And I did use Stormchaser last season, and it was stunning, or more frequently. So I don't know what that's all about really. But we're going to get some extra shots with Arbalest. There's no point to reload for one shot. To talk a little bit more about DPS, because it goes so quick. It's 45 second time window to do your damage. The boss has 10 million health plus. Right, so if you can get 3 mil per phase, that's nice, but mine's just shy of that. I mean, I'm right just before middle mark. I'm right before 50% HP. So, obviously if I'd got the debuff, it would have definitely turned it into a 4 phase. In reality though, all that it's done is extended the run time of the solo. That's all it's done. It's just made it so I have to run an extra phase. And if you've done 4 phases, I'm sure that you can do 5 phases. There is a higher chance of death now though, I will say that, from last season, because we don't have electric armor. So now you've got to play a little bit more clever with your aspects. Like I said, Spark of Haste is procced all the time and I'm getting resistance. So I just have to run around this map with Riskrunner and I'm getting damage resistance, and it stacks, like I said earlier. So for example, I think last season I didn't run Spark of Resistance. I ran Spark of Recharge because I didn't need the resistance because I already had electric armor. This season that changes, so that slight difference on fragments I've changed to adjust for the lack of electric armor. So you've got to, as I say, look at it like that. I mean, if you didn't solo flawless last season, then you won't really know what I'm talking about, but if you did last season, I'm just saying, if you redo it, it's a little bit more difficult than what it was, but not by much. I wouldn't say it's that much more difficult. I would just say it's a little bit more. But there are plenty of other setups, like Solar Titan is universal in this, because healing spots, uptime on Radiant's really strong. Arc Hunter is universal as well. It's super strong is Arc Hunter, but I wanted to start with a Warlock run first. I'll do all 3 classes. I mean, I even done it on Arc Titan last season. which was difficult, let me tell you. That was really difficult doing a solo on Arc Titan on this. Timing your Thunder Crash is exactly... Like, if you miss one T-Crash, you've just lost your damage. Right? Which is very easy to miss a T-Crash on this boss. Because she'll just side hover. So, Arc Titan's not, I wouldn't say, applicable. I wouldn't recommend it. It's more of a challenge to actually do it with Arc Titan, as opposed to it being effective, which most people don't want that. 80 to 90% of you don't want that. You're not bothered about the challenge too much. What you're bothered about is getting the emblem so that you can show other people that you've got the emblem. That is literally it. And I know people say, well, there's more to it, there's loot. No, but if you solo flawless and you're not in it for the loot, you're in it for the emblem. Why would you solo farm a dungeon for loot when you can LFG fire team it? Why would you do it? If you want to farm, say, a weapon. I just farmed this, to be honest, getting to that. All the weapons from this dungeon, I farmed it from the starting encounter. So a bipod rocket, Cold Comfort. I got loads of Cold Comfort rolls. Greasy Look or whatever, the glaive, I farmed it from the first encounter. The Stasis Waveframe GL that comes with Kill Clip and the healing mod, forget the name of it. Unrelenting and Kill Clip. It's a fantastic Stasis frame Waveframe GL. Farmed from the start encounter. So if you want to farm weapons, just farm the first encounter over and over in LFG team. You'll average every 5-6 minutes you'll get a weapon. That's the way to do it. So but obviously this video isn't for that. It's to show you a solo flawless, because I know that there's still people not got this, because let's have it out, it really is the most difficult dungeon in the game. It's not because of its mechanics, although it is mechanic heavy. The reason why it's the most difficult is because it's an endurance run. That's why. Right? Like I said earlier, Shattered Throne solo flawless can be done in less than 20 minutes. Probably less than 10 minutes, the world record. Right? Well, it's like 5 or 6 minutes, I think, something like that. So you just like compare that to the fact that this whole boss is taking most people 50 minutes to clear, and the first boss 20 minutes to clear. So it's, as I said, it's definitely a different tier compared to the other dungeons. When you're exiting as well, when you're looking for deep sight, always evaluate where deep sight is. And can you deep sight with enough HP when you're running to it? You need to make that decision before you do deep sight, because when you do deep sight, you stand still and wave your arm. When that goes on, you are vulnerable to the enemies. So, you're making a decision in your head to say, can I out-tank what's going on? Chances are you can with Riskrunner, but not always. So you may need to get a healing rift down as you do your deep sight. You're gonna get plenty of healing rifts anyways. This is why we're on Vesper Radius. We're on Vesper Radius for this very fact. The fact that you can spam your healing rift, you can spam your pulse nades and your abilities. So use them. Don't be frightened to use abilities, because you definitely get it back for the next time you need it, probably. Out of the Hive Guardians as well, talking about those a little bit. The most threatening one, I think, is the solo one. The Wizard is the least threatening, because, funny enough, we were doing a solo GM and the Wizards were the worst thing, but in this, it's the opposite. The Wizard's the easiest, just because the Wizard just stays in one place. Sentinel can be manipulated. I've seen people actually lose a solo flawless to Sentinel. Not respecting Sentinel. You must respect him and don't push up too much unless you're doing Arc Hunter Punch Dodge or Solar Titan or even Strand Titan with a melee build. If you're not doing any of that and your build revolves more around clearing ads like with Riskrunner and stuff, use Riptide. Riptide will freeze the Hive Guardian in place And as I said, there's a place to manipulate the Sentinel quite easily, which next time I get a Sentinel I will mention it. The Solar Hunter's the worst because of Blade Barrage, but same thing, you need to play on the hill and don't push up too much, and actually time your attacks. So between each super the Solar Hunter does, you can get 2 Riptide shots off each time. So it's like 2 shots, hide, 2 shots, hide. That's how you do it. Next time, as I say, get to there, I'll point it out. The moths are a problem as well. So make sure that you are taking the time to establish what the moths are doing. I've said this before about moths. Most of you have probably missed it because it's hidden somewhere in a video. Like a lot of my information are hidden in vids. And if you don't watch the entire video, I'm sorry, you end up losing valuable information. But that's your fault, not mine. I timestamp the videos as best as I can for you. This is long format content. That's what I've always done. That's what I'm best at. Not short format. Because short format, I can't possibly get out all my information within 60 seconds. If I do, it's diluted the information. But anyways, the moths. If there's a lot of acolytes alive and there's a lot of moths attached to acolytes, if you kill an acolyte and the moth is attached to the acolyte, the moth will not seek you out. The moth has 2 move pools. Right? 2 move pools. Number 1, the moth will establish if there's another acolyte to shield. If the answer is no, the moth will then enrage on you. And that's where you need to worry. So it might look sometimes that it's dangerous when I'm dealing with all these moths and the acolytes, right? Like clearing them and not actually shooting the moths. But they'll end up just shielding another acolyte anyways. And my pulse nade will more than likely, pulse nade or Axel will destroy that moth. So really, when do you need to worry about moths? You need to worry when there's only 2 acolytes left alive. Say that each acolyte has a moth attached. If you kill both of them in quick succession, the 2 moths will track you, and that is a wipe. 2 moth explosions can kill you with added damage from the boss. We're on the latter phases of DPS here. I'm just going to speed up the footage from here because the video is long enough, and there's literally nothing else that you can really learn from the video in terms of my gameplay. So I've sped up phase 4 and phase 5, not damage but only for the actual mechanics and doing everything. Just let it be known that this dungeon is very difficult to commentate on. I don't generally say that about videos, but this one is, because I can only really tell you what I can tell you about the mechanics of the dungeon. I can't really... Once I get 30 minutes into it, of this fight at least, I'm sort of done with what I need to say. There's nothing else. Whereas with other dungeons, it's not the case because they're shorter. So with that, like with me telling you that, make sure that you subscribe or even join as a member. I've actually set up a membership plan thing. You can join as a member. It's cheap. It's for everybody. It's one price. There isn't 3 levels like other people. Just 1 tier. That's it. And it's just a trial to see how it goes. That's it. And it's going all right at the minute. It's going really well actually. So I'm just saying, who else has done a full commentary run for Solar Flaws Goes to the Deep with commentary ranging over an hour and a half for some, well, like videos? This isn't an hour and a half, but you know what I'm saying. Who's done all 3 classes, all Solar Flawless, with commentary on every video? I'm asking you the question because I want to know. I don't think anyone has. So that's just my point, that you get videos here that you don't get elsewhere. Not that other people should be doing this style of video. In actual fact, I don't want them to, because this is my category. They don't have to do it. Because I know that people don't want to do it. I have encouraged other content creators to do it. But they won't. That's fine, I say. Because it's more for me. I'll just do it. I'm happy enough with it. But there's other style of content that people make that suits them better. The silent videos doesn't suit me. I get zero growth out of it. It's almost pointless me doing the video. If I do a non-commentary video, it's always poor. Watch time's lower, views are lower, everything. Unless it's a very particular video like where it's really short and there's no commentary needed, then that's fair enough. But it's never suited me doing silent videos. I'll only do commentary videos though when it's needed. If there's no commentary needed, then what's the point in me talking? I'm not one of those that talks for no reason, right? I'm giving you content that isn't given to you by anyone else anywhere. So that's why you see this style of content. But I'm just saying it's actually really difficult to make. It is for this dungeon at least. It's quite daunting. You think about it. You've got an hour solo to do. You've got to edit it. You've got to do commentary on it. That video then needs to be processed. PS5 can't render a video at 60 minutes, therefore needs a third-party app or software. Right? Then these clips need merged. This, that, and the other. You know, this is why people don't do this style of content, because it's too difficult, let's be honest. It's too difficult for people to make. Not only that, they haven't got the confidence to do it in the first place. Some of them. You know, especially if there's a solo channel with low subs, you're not entitled to do a video that's silent. I don't think you are entitled, because your run, there's no watchability in the run there. If you're a massive YouTuber that has done this for years, then I think they're entitled to do what style content that they do. But when you're new, you've got to make content for what people want, not what you want. And that's the big difference. But as I said, people with lots of subs who have done this for nearly 10 years are entitled to what they want to do. But I'm just saying, somebody who's small, they've maybe started in the last 1 to 2 years, they're not entitled to do a silent video. I don't think they are. Especially if they're wanting to grow, because nowadays the way content has changed massively. Right? It's changed massively since 2014. More's expected of you now more than ever, and the competition is higher than ever. Like, you've got some of the best players in the game now, literally. Whereas in D1, early D2 especially, there was no one. Early D2, there was only 3 of us, 3 or 4 of us doing solos, and I'm not over exaggerating that. There was a handful of people for that, at least till Forsaken, doing solos. There was maybe 3 or 4 console players doing solos, and I'm on about the end game Prestige Nightfalls. There was, rest of them were PC, but not even that. There wasn't many PC players because everyone just stopped playing. Right, so it's completely different now. The competition is far higher. Things that I used to do back then, right, I'd be happy with. Nowadays, I'd be like, oh, I have to rerun this back. I have to look at this. I have to do that. The competition's far higher than what it's ever been. And that's just, like I say, a simple fact of it. But that's just a little brief explanation of why you don't see this style of content anywhere, because it's too difficult to make, and it might not be worth it to make it. I mean, obviously I'm figuring that out right now. If it is, I'm still trying to figure that out now, if it's still worth it to do it or not. Because it is difficult, and you do end up uploading slower than what everybody else will, because you've got to watch your damn video back and then re-commentate it. Because it's like this, when you're uploading vids, if you haven't uploaded it on reset, you've already lost so many views. Somebody's already beat you to it. Somebody's already done the solo. Somebody's already done it. What's the point in you doing it on Wednesday when somebody's doing it on Tuesday at reset an hour afterwards? Well, obviously there is a point, but you know what I'm saying. So there's a cost that comes to it, right? But I pay that by seeing if it's still worth it, which hopefully it is in the end. We'll see how it goes. But this is the final phase of the fight. Literally, as I say, nothing much else to tell you. I'll let it play out, really. I will say that, though, on this phase, always use a super on one of the nights if you need to. Because you don't have a reason to have a super until boss DPS, which you will almost certainly get by then. Especially solo-wise. So, just use your super. It doesn't matter. Use your abilities. The more you spam a Healing Rift, the more you spam your Arc Souls, the quicker you get all that stuff back. Don't be frightened to spam Riptide on Hive Guardians like that. Don't be frightened to, as I say, use it, because Riptide, that's what Riptide's got its utility there massively. And you can see all the special weapon ammo on the floor. There's so much. So I could just spam this for ages and still have ammo. So it just goes to show, as I say, you should be running primary special heavy for this. Don't run double special heavy. You would put yourself, I think, at a risk of not getting enough heavy. And then you're using a pseudo special, like a trace rifle. Which, as I said, that playstyle does work on GMs because you've got champs. You've got enemies to sort of farm ammo off. In this, you're at the mercy of the drops. Which, why the hell would you use that helmet solo anyways? There's no use to it. I was looking at it the other day. There's no use to that helmet. It is a team exotic. And Aeon Gauntlets don't work solo. Right, which I wish they did. They should change that, make Aeon Gauntlets solo. That would be so good. I would love that. But that's why I say, not only that as well, exotic primaries, they generate more heavy intrinsically. We've actually killed this wizard too soon. That's fine though. I will mention now how much damage the orbs do. They do so much damage if you do an Arc Void or Soul. The Arc one, at the very least, it's almost like you're throwing a pulse nade. But it's only for like the initial impact of the nade that it sort of does. But it is really good. It applies Jolt. But yeah, we're just doing an Acolyte, our Acolyte trick for DPS. But that was a Soul Flawless for Ghost of the Deep. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.